now Jimmy Ogbongbine, Head of Research at Consolidated Discount, joins me to discuss where the markets are headed for today. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for joining us.
You're welcome.
So like I mentioned, it's good to see that the market is back in the black. We've seen over the last 3 weeks, it really has struggled to move. And of course, it's also interesting to see that volumes also rose significantly, over 150% yesterday. Your thoughts? Do you think we have now turned the corner? Do you think this market is about to move higher?
I'm not really sure if the market is about to move higher, because I really do not see what will drive the optimism. This is the earnings season for the banks, and you remember that even Fitch had to make a call that after the MPR, after the increase in the CRR for public sector deposits, that they really do not see Nigerian banks posting the kind of profits they posted last year. Now, for the first half of the year, you remember that the CRR had not been implemented then. So really, you do not see that CRR.
So the impact is really in the second half.
Exactly, it's in the second half. But even at that, in that first half, profits were relatively flat. So even without such issues, even without such liquidity constraints, the banks were not able to do much more than they did at the same time last year. So in the second half, you expect things to be tougher. So it's possible that at worst, for 2013 full year, I mean financial year, you probably find banks, recording flat indicators, or, seemingly low indicators, lower indicators.
Right, but so would you say, given all that is available in the market right now, a lot of people saying that the non-financial stocks are overpriced, richly priced, depending on where you're looking at, the brewery sector, the foods companies. Would you say that the banks are less attractive today? If you're looking at equities today, after that hit that they've received from the regulatory changes from the MPC decision?
In terms of pricing, the banks, some of the biggest banks are still, they still have price to earnings of less than 10. Price to book seem relatively modest as well. So in terms of pricing, you say that yes, the banks are undervalued,
but earnings are under pressure.
Yes, exactly. But looking forward, the horizon indicates that investors are still wary, that the regulatory constraints, the regulatory pressures may actually induce some issues that could make banks actually post lower earnings. So that outlook is what would still stymie the bank's results.
All right. Of course, something that impacts everyone is the exchange rate, and we've seen the Naira come under some pressure recently, now to 163, and a lot of people saying the new number was somewhere around 161. We're 2 Naira above that right now. Are you getting concerned, or do you think that this is just a blip? We'll see the central bank come to the table and bring it back down?
What I gather is that the Naira, rose to 163 because some expected sales from NNPC oil companies and some expected defense from the central bank did not materialize, did not come to fruition. So that's what actually affected the Naira. But then that just tells you how vulnerable the currency is. One auction, once there's a slow down in supply, in just one auction, the Naira loses as much as 2 Naira and then sends everyone panicking and scampering for safety again. So it just shows you how vulnerable the currency is, and it just shows you how at this point in time, because now the central bank is facing some headwinds. There's a slower accretion to the foreign exchange reserves.
Right.
So whereas the central bank has the capacity to defend the Naira, but going forward, that capacity is constrained. The federal government had to withdraw 115 billion Naira from the excess crude account the other day just to augment July's FAC allocations, which has brought down the ECA to about $5.1 billion. There's still so much cry about oil theft, output leakages, revenue shortfalls, and then by mid-September, the U.S. Federal Reserves will have this all-important 2-day meeting that will be followed by a press conference by Chairman Bernanke, which would actually determine the outcome for emerging markets and frontier markets, especially one like Nigeria. And then Abraham Wanko, the chairman of, or the head of the debt management organization, just told some journalists recently that Nigeria's our debt position, that as at early 2012, foreign portfolio investors had close to zero. And by the end of 2012, December 2012, they had about $5.112 billion. So it just shows how vulnerable and how exposed we are to things outside our factors, exogenous factors. Whatever Mr. Bernanke says.
Do you think that is worrying foreign investors right now? Because like I said, the volumes have been reasonably low, relatively low recently. Of course, yesterday was a bit of an outlier.
Okay, now there are two issues worrying foreign investors. One are the exogenous factors. Whatever Mr. Bernanke says about the tapering plans, which affects all emerging and frontier markets, including Nigeria. So there's very little Nigeria can do about that.
So do you get the sense a lot of people are just waiting until we see that out of the way? Because, like you mentioned,
people will wait till we see it out of the way. But people are also watching our revenue position, the government's revenue position.
Right.
So that's an issue peculiar to us. That's
Right.
one in our hands. And
Right.
if the federal government has to keep withdrawing from the excess crude account, if the federal government has to keep posting lower revenues month on month, then I think at some point in time that would reflect on the value of our currency.
All right, let's take it back to the market. So in this context, how do you invest in stocks? Clearly, a lot of people talking about the banks. I think you also echo that sentiment. So what are your best ideas right now looking at equities?
Well, there's still value. Looking at stock prices, you see Transcorp stubbornly below 2 naira, and Transcorp just acquired the second biggest power plant in the country. And so I can imagine people who were shouting some months and years ago that MTN should list, Tisalat should list, and no one realizes that there's a power company listed.
So now we have power companies
exactly
listed. Of course, Forte Oil is also invested in that,
exactly. So
in that space too.
You look at the price of Transcorp below 2 naira, and it owns the second biggest power plant, and you just wonder, are people not seeing value? When would people see value? But I look at Transcorp that, look, this is a stock that is below 2 naira, but this is just an era that will soon pass. Transcorp will soon it's probably going to be Nigeria's first utility company on the exchange. And so once it crosses that line, and once investors see value, and it will probably never come back again for life.
Are you that bullish about Forte Oil as well? Because they are also invested in that space.
I'm not that bullish about Forte Oil because of the political exposure of the principal of the firm, and I think it's just a matter of time before you've got some negative press again about the principal of Forte. So I think that's actually an issue for me, especially if I'm looking long term. But for speculation, I won't mind playing in Forte because there's some value, but the value is being constrained by the political risks attached to the character of the
What are your best ideas in the banking space? What should we be buying right now?
GT, good old GT, First Bank, UBA to a reasonable extent.
So the old reliables are still the place to go.
Reliables, yeah, because they're the ones who liquid at this point in time to play in the interbank market at a period when everyone is crying of liquidity crunch. They're the ones who have the balance sheets to play in the big ticket transactions we just talked about, like power. So if you typically look at the names who are playing in power, you see the likes of UBA there. So
do you like UBA? I mean, of course, we've seen that they're coming back after a pretty bad season. Are you bullish on UBA, given where it is now?
I'll still leave UBA in my speculative basket for a number of reasons, because I think they have major operational issues in their halls. I'm talking of customer care, and we've seen how these issues actually impact on your numbers eventually, and we've also seen how improving on these issues also impacts on your numbers. So you look at the GT model, it worked on perception, it worked on customer care issues, we brought people into their banking halls, we brought people into their internet platforms, and then you can see the numbers reflect on their earnings. You can see all these issues reflect on their earnings. But with UBA, yes, they're getting so many things right, but I think they're leaving out that key issue. So that's why I'll leave it in my speculative basket, not in my fundamental for now.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Jimmy Ogbogmine, Head of Research at Consolidated Discount, giving us his thoughts on the best ideas on the stock market.